Is that one show you like really an anime? Let's talk about that. What's up, guys? It's your boy, and today we are going to be talking about kind of what makes an anime an anime. And I kind of bring up this topic because it's just kind of odd how different countries can make different animated stuff and it still be boxed into the same place, even if it may not actually be a part of that box. But what puts it in the box that is anime? And that's really what I'm going to kind of talk about, give a little debriefing of my opinion as to whether that show would count as anime versus not anime, and what kind of sets that standard as well. So before we really kind of get into some of the more technical stuff and more the kind of the difficult stuff, if I was to bring to you a show like Family Guy, right? And I looked at just any average person and say, is this an anime? They would probably say, no, it's just a cartoon. Like, it's something that, adults watch, and it's just kind of this goofy little, like, cartoon about Peter Griffin and Lois and all of these, like, typical American characters, right? They wouldn't say that that's an anime. They wouldn't even consider the fact that it's anime, because it doesn't have the look, it doesn't have the feel, and it's made in America, whereas anime is supposed to be Japanese, right? So if you ever hear somebody ask, is Family Guy an anime, people will obviously dismiss that outright because clearly that is not the case. And that all seems well and good until you then bring up some other shows that you would think would be along the same lines, but people actually kind of find it to be a little bit more dicey. And I actually have a little bit of sympathy with their arguments, but at the same time, it's not in the same box, in my opinion. But I'll explain why. And those shows that I'm going to point out and kind of use as examples are Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Teen Titans, the original series, not Teen Titans Go. And these two series, while they are not maybe considered anime, well, we'll get into that, they are still very stylized in the form of anime, right? So you look at them and you think, oh, this cartoon kind of is styled a little differently. It reminds me a little bit of like Pokemon or some other shows that I watched as a kid. It's kind of along the same lines, right? So maybe that's considered an anime. I mean, they're going for the stylization that you're familiar with in terms of kind of having a lot more expressions and like kind of being a little bit more boisterous in how it portrays its message, right? Like some of the expressions that Starfire gives, or her eyes will turn into hearts or something, right? And in a typical American show, it's not going to be quite that expressive. But for shows that have that anime stylization, it takes those liberties and becomes a lot more expressive in that way, right? So, with that said, are these shows anime? Well, I would argue that they are not. And if you were to ask it, there's two different kind of groups of people you could ask. If you asked a non-anime like watching group of people, if they would lump it in the same category as other anime, right? Could you lump Teen Titans in with Pokemon? Could you lump in Avatar with Pokemon, or those other like childhood shows that are actual anime that were made in Japan? Those people who don't watch anime on a like serious like basis, just kind of casual fans, right, would probably say, yeah, I mean, I could fit those in the same bucket. I don't see why they wouldn't be. But then if you ask somebody who's a serious anime fan and really likes like keeping up with seasonal shows and watches everything, and you can't keep up with all the anime that they watch because they just watch so much of it, they're gonna be like, absolutely not. No. Teen Titans is not allowed to be in the same group as Bleach, as Naruto, as One Piece, as any of them. It's completely separate. And you could claim with the anime fan, the person who really kind of keeps track of it, they at least know more about where anime is sourced, what goes into it, why it's a little bit different than Teen Titans or Avatar. But I also see sympathy with the point that they're animated in the same kind of fashion, right? And so that's where we're going to start throwing a wrench into things a little bit. And I'm going to bring up a movie that's on my anime list called Soul yoke, I think is probably how it's said. Something along the lines of that. But in English, it's Seoul Station, as in South Korea's Seoul. And so with that movie, it was made in South Korea and put on my anime list. The styling of it is still very similar to that of an anime. But is it considered an anime? Because now we're getting into a little bit more of a demographic area that's much more similar to that of Japan, right? You're seeing a lot more anime stylizations that are similar because the influence may even be of similar origins, right? Still in that same kind of part of Asia. And so you could make the case that, I mean, it's on my anime list. Obviously, some people lump it in as an anime, but should it be considered an anime to the same way? I mean, it still tells its own story. It's stylized like an anime. It's made in Asia. So should we consider that to be an anime? And honestly, that's where it gets a little bit harder for me, as somebody who watches a lot of anime, to come up with a more definitive answer. Now, I do think that Teen Titans, and I do think that Avatar, The Last Airbender are not anime. I don't believe that those should be lumped in the same way. And the reason why is because they take more influences than anything. I think if you were to take like most mainstream anime and compare them to anime-styled shows here in the United States, there's a lot of similarities, but I think they are distinct enough to where you'd be able to point out which one's the anime and which one's the US-made show, right? And so Korea and some of the shows that they've made is where it started to get a little bit more dicey for me, right? Because now it's stylized a lot more similarly, but it's still being made in two different places. So, which is which? And I honestly kind of open up the floor on this one because I don't have a solid opinion one way or the other when it comes to that. I lean more towards they are not anime, they are Korean, they are separate. But there's one more case that I need to bring up because I think that these are anime, definitively. And yet they come from Korean sources. Have you guys ever heard of Tower of God? It was a pretty popular anime a few years back. Another pretty popular one that came out a couple years ago is Noblesse, I think is probably how you say it. Those two shows are Korean, and what I mean by that is the manhwa, which is the manga but made in Korea, is exactly that. It's Korean, right? But the anime that was made based on those manhwa were done in Japanese studios, and they were completely done in Japan. So that's also going to be the case with the upcoming Solo Leveling. These are sourced from Korea, but when they were turned into anime, when they were adapted, they were done so in Japan. I really think that those are anime, right? Those should be lumped in with any anime that is produced entirely in Japan and is based off of source material that is made in Japan as well. But it also creates an interesting dynamic, right? Because now you have things that are made in Korea that I would fully consider anime, as compared to movies that were made in Korea with anime styling that I wouldn't consider anime. And that's where I'm a little bit torn, right? As to what should be considered anime. I tend to lean more towards, let's try to keep it as Japanese as possible, right? Because at the end of the day, they're still the kind of originators of that style and the masters of it, right? Like, they pump out so much anime every single year, and it has such a distinct look to it that I really just don't think is quite I mean, I guess you could, in theory, mimic it here with other studios, but it's not to the same degree as it is in Japan. Actually, to that point, when Disney wanted to make a Star Wars anime, they didn't make a Disney show that was in the style of anime. They outsourced it to Japan for Star Wars Visions, and it was all done in Japanese. So even Disney kind of thinks along this same way, even though, yeah, maybe they technically could hand draw it all and do it in the same styling, but they left it to the experts in Japan. So that is all to say, this video isn't so much a definitive answer as it is an interesting question to pose, and I would like to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. What makes an anime? Is it really that Japanese element, or do you consider Korean shows that are made in Korea to also fit under that anime umbrella? Because I could honestly see arguments either way, and would be curious to hear your thoughts. That's about all from me this week. Next week, you'll see a video about something else anime related, because I haven't planned it yet. That said, I hope I'll see you all for it, and I'll see you guys next time.